friends, Queen of Flannel here. Welcome to the channel if you are new. Welcome back if you have been around for a while. So today we are working on this cute image from Rita Prince. I got this off of Etsy and I will link to her shop in the description. This came in, I think, a pack of different storefronts. And so I grabbed the coffee shop for today. And this technique that I am using today was actually a request from a subscriber over on the community tab. There is it's not a poll, it's just a post over there asking about alcohol markers and things that you guys might like to see me do with the alcohol markers, specific subjects, and there was a request for using alcohol markers as a base and pencils over the top. Now, I did a video on using water-based markers with pencils over the top a few years ago. It's actually the most viewed video on the channel, so I'll pop a link to that up in the corner if you guys want to take a look at that. And really the technique between the two it's not really that different. Let me walk you guys through the supplies that I'm using today, and then I'll get into the explanation of how this works and how I did this. So for paper today, I am using the Neenah Vellum Bristol Cardstock. It is a 67 pound 147 GSM. I know I have used this in the past, and for whatever reason, you'll see later in the video, and I'll talk about it when we get to the pencil work. I really struggled with the pencils on this one. I also had issues with the green marker, the green Copic marker, because I am working with Copics on this image. I had issues with the lighter green Copic marker that I used up on the top two trees. I don't know if I've been a little hot-handed, but some of my markers have started to leak during use. And if I'm not paying attention, it will just blurble all out over the image. But basically what I'm doing right now is going through and laying down my base layers with the alcohol markers. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can do your typical tri, quad, however many markers you want to use, to get the color that you want, and then just use your pencils for fine details at the end. Or you can keep it simple, stick to one layer of flat color, and then use your pencils to do a little bit more work over the top. It's really just a personal preference. Typically when I do this, I'm looking for quickness. I don't want a project that's going to take me 5 hours to finish. So I am just laying down a flat wash of color with the markers right now. And I don't know if you guys saw when the marker bubbled out, I ended up coming in with a fine liner and just rolling with it and turned the little blurble into another leaf on the tree. And so now I'm coming in and laying down my my flat color on the roof, and I'm not leaving any open space for highlights on this one. I'm coloring the entire section with the marker. So like I explained in my water-based marker video, when you're using your markers to underpaint this way, essentially you want to keep your marker to your lightest color. So where you would pick out 3 color pencils in a light a mid, and a dark, your marker becomes your light and basically replaces one of your colored pencils. Now, I always like to recommend that you, when you're planning your project out prior, even if you don't end up using it, that you try and find a pencil that is going to closely match your marker. Even with the alcohol markers, and I found especially on this paper, I did have some issues with not being able to get a flat wash of color, and I really didn't want to have to go back through and do a second layer with the markers. I could have, but I chose not to. I just moved on. But if you have a color that is going to closely match your marker, you can kind of use that to correct out some of those areas. And that's especially true with the water-based markers, because you're going to get, there's no getting around with water-based markers. You are going to get streaks. And I do talk about that in my other video, how to correct those out. That's one of the benefits with alcohol markers, is that they dry pretty flat, as long as you're not going back over part of your image and not the whole thing, because you can layer with your alcohol markers and get different tonal values. And so it looks kind of kind of flat right now, but I think in the end it comes together fairly well. And I'm just going through and coloring it in some of these little details. And you will notice that there are a couple spots that I don't hit with the marker, and I just leave white and end up coming in with just the pencils later. Like, some of those cables were really tough to get in there with the marker and not have it like bleed out of the lines. And it was just, kind of using the paper as a white highlight. And interestingly enough, despite the fact that I really only used a handful of, or what I thought, handful of markers on this, I ended up with like half of my Copic collection on my desk for some reason. I don't know how that happened. But this was a really fun image to work on. It was fairly quick. I think over the course of a day, it took me maybe 2.5 hours ish to do all this. Yeah, this was where it got tricky with the alcohol marker to get in those cables. This was honestly, in the end, my favorite part of this entire image was this little vending machine. As soon as I saw the image, I had a red vending machine in my head, and I knew it was going to be red. And I mean, at this point, it's pretty self-explanatory. We're just laying down our flat washes of color. Now, with this sign, I tried to be really careful, because I had in my mind that I wanted this to look like one of those electric neon signs. So I ended up leaving some white space around the inside of the letters, and you'll see when I get to the pencil work how that turned out. And I almost used that same orange color on the open sign, but I decided I didn't want to do them both the same. For such a simple image, there was a lot of like little things that I almost missed as I was going through this. Like we've got the little satellite dishes up on the top, the little air conditioner, all the little like buckets and cleaning supplies and whatnot down at the bottom, and then there's the little rocks and you can kind of see me like as I'm grabbing markers. I was trying to keep this to like, okay, let's do all of the gray stuff first. Let's do all of the brown stuff next. So that like I wasn't swapping markers back and forth like a crazy person. It didn't work that way. Because then it was like I'd grab the gray marker and I would see like as I'm coloring like around that window, and I would see something else and be like, oh, that should be brown. Or I'd be like, oh, that should be a brown, but it should be a different brown than what is already out on my desk. So I'd have to grab another brown. I think that's what happened here. I didn't want to use the same brown that I used on the trash can for this sign. I It was interesting going back and watching this too, like as I was, snipping and cutting things, like watching like where you can see my, even though you can only see my hands, you could tell that I was thinking just by how I tap my fingers on the desk. I just thought that was funny. So I went with warm gray, super light warm gray on these stones down at the bottom, and then I think I ended up using a neutral gray on the outer, like the outer edge and the rocks. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm gonna let you guys. I'm gonna put some music over top of this for the next little bit, and then I will pop back in when we get to the pencil work. So I will see you guys in a minute. Okay, and we are back. So you will notice that the two trees at the top have already been colored. So sometimes what I like to do when I'm recording is if there are like multiples of a certain element, I'll color some of them off camera just so that I have an idea of how I want to do it and it's easier for me to show you guys. And so that's kind of what happened here. And I'd actually intended on doing the pencil work on this with the Arteza basic pencils, and they just did not like this paper like one bit. And I know I mentioned earlier that this paper has a lot of tooth to it, and so when I realized that it was going to be a big fight using those on this paper, and I've used those on a few of my books, and they are a softer pencil, but it just, I don't know, it was like trying to color on sandpaper. And so I switched over to the Prismas, and I still felt like I was having the same issue. Like it was very difficult to get the pencils to blend out. And so it was like one of those moments where I was like, this is frustrating. Do I just like scrap this project? And I didn't want to do that because one, the image is adorable, and two, it yeah, two, it was a request. It was something that one of my subscribers wanted to see, and so I kind of just leaned into it, and I was pretty happy with the way that it came out in the end. Uh, it was definitely a very like gritty looking like texture to it, which isn't bad. It just yeah, I mean, I probably could have really like worked a little harder to attempt to like blend things out, but I feel like it would have taken a lot of time, and this video would have been like way longer than it ended up being if I would have attempted to, you know, um, try and like push that limit. And I mean, like I tried a couple different blenders before I gave up on the Arteza pencils, and so the top two trees, I really wasn't pleased with the way they came out. Because I started with one set of pencils, and so the colors are different, and then moved over to the Prismas, and by that point I'd already hit it with the Caran d'Ache blender, and that's like a solid stick of wax. So once you lay that down, uh, you're really not going to be able to do anything else over top of it. Also, apologies for the next few minutes of rotating the image back and forth. It was the only way I could get up underneath these areas and do the shadows without having to like contort my arm all around. So this was just going in. I went in with, I think it was like a dark brown color, and I just basically followed the lines that the artist gave, and used that to do my shading on that, and then just went over it just a little bit with the black. I didn't really do a whole lot of like that in between areas of those little slats. I just kind of let the marker be the highlight for that area. And now I am adding just a little texture with one of the, I think this was a warm gray. I should have wrote down my colors and my combinations before I put everything away, but they're coming to replace a window in my office next week, so I have to have everything moved at least like 3 feet away from the window, and this is not a big space as it is. So that really means moving a whole bunch of things out of my office. So I was kind of recording this in the midst of yeah, tearing my office apart. When I needed a break, I sat down and recorded this in a couple of different pieces. So this area back here gave me a little bit of trouble. It just came out very like texturized. And so that what I kind of ended up doing was when I started getting frustrated working in one spot, I just moved on to something else, and then came back to it. Because you'll see me come back to that area a few times, but I find for me that helps me to like just kind of like take my eyes off of a frustrating part of a piece, work on something else, and then come back to it. And sometimes just that few minutes of like not with whatever it is that's got me all fired up helps me to come back and just be like, okay, well, let me try this. I feel like this image was a lesson in problem solving. I don't use my black colored pencils very much. It's interesting because I hear a lot of people that, you know, they stock up. They've got like a whole like backup supply of like the Prisma white and the Prisma blacks. I don't use black very often. But I felt like with this image and kind of the vibe that I was going to end up having to go for with it, I ended up having to bring in the white and the black. And so this is just adding in some cast shadows for some of these little elements. Oh, no, never mind. I was just coloring the bottom of the little vending machine. I had the cast shadows later. I love this, like, honestly, this little vending machine just makes the image. I feel like if I had done this in any other color, it just the end result just wouldn't be the same. And I left the inside of the vending machine. I didn't want to do that with markers, so I just hit it with the colored pencil there. It was a little bit too small of an area for me to get in with the brush nibs on the Copics. And so this was just adding a little bit of definition, some depth underneath those shadows. Because it's like that's the color that I used for the wood underneath that the sections of roof there, the paneling on the buildings. It was a pretty light color, and so up where those shadows are under the overhang, I did want to darken up the actual like color of the panels so it looked like it blended into the shadows. So now I'm working on the little coffee cup sign, and I kept this pretty simple. I wanted to stick to, you know, coffee colors. I think I do come back a little later on and just add add a little bit more to some of those areas. So this I mentioned earlier that I had a plan for this, and I wanted it to look like a neon sign. And so I left some white space around the orange marker and decided I was going to come in with a hot pink. And I was really happy with the way this came out. And now I probably could have added a little bit of like reflective light with a lighter pink on the little background of the sign, but I chose not to. I think if the paper hadn't been giving me enough, or if the paper hadn't been giving me the issues that it was giving me, I probably would have been able to pull it off. But I just I liked how it looked so far, and I didn't want to like mess it up. So I ended up just leaving it lighter, and then I come in later and do some detail work on it. And so this, by the time this video comes out, this image will be up on my Instagram, so you guys will be able to see it in its final form. Because I feel like the recording camera doesn't always do the art justice, so I like to try and put them up over on Insta for you guys to look at. I like how the shading on this little like light pole came out too. I don't know what that was. I think it was me trying to brush crumbs away. And this is a lot of like the little like nitpicky like shadows on the buckets. And is this when I add the cat? I don't remember. This is when I add the cast shadow of these two little machines. I'm assuming that the little gray one next to the vending machine is like an ice machine. I think I come back in a little bit and add more cast shadow to that area. I know I darkened it up because I'm sitting here looking at it on my desk while I record this. Seriously, I'm sitting here watching this and recording this voiceover, and I just keep looking at that little vending machine, and I'm just like, oh my god, it's so adorable. I love it. So now I'm just going through, and I was kind of like toying with how I wanted to do the windows. I didn't want to like completely color them in. And so this is a daytime scene. So what I ended up doing was just taking the same blue pencil that I used on those little vases and just used it inside the little like reflective hash marks just to give that um, come on Brian, to give that look of a reflective surface. And now back to my nemesis, the trees. I still don't like, these are like my least favorite part of this. I don't like how they came out. You know, it was just, and that might be because I'm soured on the fact that you know, that I had a Copic marker leak on me in the middle of a drawing. I mean, it happens, but man, I have such a love-hate relationship with the Copics lately. Like, and it's like I know that for adult coloring that they're definitely not the alcohol marker of choice. They're expensive and just not as readily accessible as some other brands. So I try and mix it up and you know alternate my projects. So if I use the Copics in one, I try and use the Ohuhus in another. And um, I don't know if anybody in the community has a alcohol marker conversion chart. If they do, that would be amazing. I thought about putting something together, but like I don't have all of the Copics, and I don't know if I'm going to get all of the Copics. Um, like I know I've talked about it before, like you know with the grays, like you don't have to have every single gray Copic marker there is. So like I'm not going to get the toner grays. I'm perfectly content with my every other, you know, neutral, warm, and cool gray. And I just, you know, I know there's this whole like full set syndrome, but man, they're expensive, and I don't know about the rest of you, but um I if I get something like a set of pencils that has like 150 colors in it, because my brain just says, oh, you have to have them because of the, you know, what happens the day that comes that, you know, you don't have the 150 set and you're missing a color that you need for a project. But it always ends up being I go for the same colors the majority of my project. It's like I get in my head, and I noticed this. I was working on something with the luminance, and I always go like my first blue that I go to is the indigo blue. So this is when I started doing some of like the final blending. And ultimately, I decided to use the Derwent blender. This isn't the burnisher, but this is a really hard blender. It almost feels like a pastel pencil, and so it's kind of scratchy, but it does not leave the wax on your paper like the Prisma or the Caran d'Ache, like the wax blenders. And I didn't really want that glossy look, and like when I used it on the trees, it just didn't. The paper was just not happy. So, and I wasn't really going for like perfect blending here. Uh, I didn't want a completely smooth finish just because of the nature of how this looked. I just, like I said, I kept that gritty look. And I think I did come back in a couple spots with some colored pencil just to tidy some things up. And that's just smoothing out some of the cast shadows from these plants. Oh, yep. And then I had kind of forgotten about our little trash can down there, just chilling. And then adding a little more depth to the corners of that sign. I think I forgot about the rocks at the bottom too. And the little air conditioner apparently. I feel like this the vibe of this kind of looks like an old like comic book style like illustration. And this was just adding a little bit of highlight on that like the tannish piece around the window. It just felt like some kind of like metallic frame to me, so I kind of went with that vibe. And so this was yeah, I went in, and since these were so tiny, I wasn't too fussed about it. I just wanted to add some color to the objects inside the little vending machine so they just didn't look like little white blobs in there. And so I just grabbed a couple pencils and okay, so now I'm coming down to the little step at the bottom, and there were some breaks in the line work here, so I just used those lines that the artist gave and just basically pumped them up a little bit with the colored pencil. I left the areas where she left blank, and then this was just adding a little bit of color around that surrounding area. I think it was the eggshell that I used. I didn't really want this to be like super dark down here. And then I hit it with the blender and just roughed it up a little bit. And now we're doing the little rocks. And I'm pretty sure, is this, nope, back with the blender. We're coming toward the end, so it must be here in a minute. There it is. Okay, so I grabbed one of my Ohuhu acrylic paint markers, and I'm sorry about the blurriness. I try and pull my hand back so you guys can see, but the camera caught the top of the marker, so it was focusing on that, and so now I'm just taking the white marker and going in and adding some little highlights on some of these metallic areas. And in between the little blue areas on the windows. Yeah, the reflectiveness of this marker. Camera really enjoyed this. And so this was just, I went in and added some little like dots of white to our neon sign, and I really like the way it came out. Yep, and then I went in and added some on the light pole. I really love these markers. These are from Ohuhu. I think they're a relatively new. They come in a 24 pack. If they release more colors of these, it would be chef's kiss. So they have a fine point on one end and a wider nib on the other. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified when I post additional content, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much.